The journey never starts if you never get uncomfortable enough to figure out it's a journey that you're on. A journey and an adventure, they're not supposed to be comfortable. But I think some people use it as a bypass to say, oh, if it's just about the journey, then I'll just sit back and whatever's going to present itself, I don't have to take action. I don't have to take responsibility. The journey doesn't start unless you actually get uncomfortable enough to create that momentum. And then you figure out, I'm learning, I'm overcoming problems, I'm figuring out more of who I am, more of what I'm capable of. What a lot of us run into is we're looking for everybody in the outside world to give us a permission slip to live the life that we want. Okay. And once we realize that we're the only person that holds that permission slip, we have to ask ourselves,
what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. I am here with Joseph Sheehey. Did I pronounce your name right?
Sheehey.
Sheehey.
Yeah.
I thought, is there not an L?
No, there's not an L. But it's spelled Sheehey. So a lot of people say Sheehey, but Sheehey.
Okay, There we go. Awesome, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for doing this. I've been wanting to do this episide for a while.
Yeah.
So before we dive in, like, give my audience a little bit of an idea, like who you are and what's going on, and like a little bit of your story, because I didn't know as much about your story until you and I both spoke in Naples. I was impacted by your talk, and I thought it made me see you even higher in my perspective than I already did. And then learning your journey of Cured, having my own experience with Cured and everything. That's why I want to have you on, just because I think your stuff will add a lot of value to my people.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I was trying to think about that. We met at Coaching Con April of last year, and then we ran into each other at what was that? That's Hidden Summit.
Yeah, Cavin's event.
Yeah, Cavin's event.
Yeah,
cool.
I've had him on the show too. So.
Yeah, brother. So so some people know me as the founder and CEO of Cured Nutrition. We've been around we'll be around for 7 years this August. We're really focused on a different type of supplement orientation. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of sports performance supplements, and Cured is really focused on, one, traditional herbalism type approach, but two, what are the problems that all humans struggle with? Stress, inability to sleep. Those are the two main reasons people come to us. But those are every human problems. Those aren't, like everybody struggles with those things. And so that company has been a project of mine for the last 7 years, but through the entire process, what I've really learned is a lot about myself, because leadership, owning a company, building a company, as you know, is not easy. This whole journey started for me about 12 years ago. So I've been in business for 7 years, but I tell a lot of people, like, it's been 12 years of building the business. And 12 years ago, in April 2012, I found myself, it was 2:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, and I was stumbling over a bridge and ended up climbing over a guardrail of the bridge and was stopped by an individual underneath the bridge. I was going to jump off the bridge and end my life. And the truth was, I was in a really dark place at that time. There was the version of me that I wanted to exist, and then there was the version of me that actually existed. I think a lot of us find ourselves in a place where that's true. Like, we want to be a different person, but stacking the behaviors and characteristic traits and living in that true integrity is something that's really hard.
Sure.
And that place for me, I always explain this to people. I say, the gap between who you say you are and who you actually are is a place that causes a lot of dissonance, because when you can recognize that you're not the person that you really want to be, you don't want to be exposed by the outside world. Anybody could poke a finger in it and be like, hey, like, you're really not that person. And for me, that caused a lot of anxiety. In college, I found myself drinking, doing drugs 5 out of 7 nights a week. And a lot of it was just a hatred towards myself. I didn't like myself. I have experiences as a child that carved beliefs in me that I was bad and I was wrong. And for me, that carried throughout most of my life. But you get to college, and what happens in college is it's like this collection of people that are 18 years old that have no idea who they are, what they want to do with their life. And sometimes a lot of us have pain, and we express that differently. And so what ended up happening was I went to college for aerospace engineering. Going into college, I was an athlete. I was somebody that I viewed myself from the outside world as like respectable, honorable, made good decisions, was the jock, like was focused on health and wellness. But then I got to college and I was basically just like numbing myself, numbing pain.
Sure.
And that led to that place on the bridge. And ever since that day, weeks after that experience, I was still like in a very dark place. I was put on antidepressants. I continued to drink. I continued to numb. And I got very resistant to the traditional path. And what I mean by that is pharmaceuticals and the quote unquote like traditional path of how you treat somebody that has anxiety or depression.
Sure.
And that launched everything that is cured. So my mom introduced me to a guy, Dr. Andrew Weil, who is one of the guys behind True Food. But he wrote a book called Spontaneous Healing. And in that book, he talks about herbalism. He talks about high dose omega-3 fatty acids for helping with depression and anxiety, and then really like nutrition.
Right.
And that was the spark that really was like, okay, I want to pursue a different path. And it was really born out of my own story and my, not hate, but disagreement with the traditional path for mental health struggles. Right. And to be fully transparent, my life was one that was destined to end up in some type of addiction. My mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family all struggled with addiction, and mainly alcohol. My cousin was killed by alcohol. My grandpa was killed by alcohol. My uncle was killed by alcohol. And I quite literally almost ended my own life because of alcohol. I was mainly under the influence of a lot of alcohol when I almost jumped off that bridge.
Wow.
The truth was, my mom escaped that. She escaped the alcoholism. But growing up, when I would open up cabinets in her bathroom or in the closet, what I saw from my mom was orange bottles and white lids. Orange bottles, white lids.
Oh, interesting.
Orange bottles, white lids. That was always the solution. And then that was the solution for me when I was experiencing anxiety and depression. And I was like, I don't think this is the path. And so I had this like deep internal resistance. And like, I'll be real, like pharmaceuticals, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication for the right person, like, of course,
sure.
I'm not going to like have this blanket statement that it's all bad. But my story was one where addiction was real in my life, in my family. And also I saw a lot of pharmaceuticals growing up. And so that sparked the whole journey that is ultimately cured. But afterwards, after I ended up graduating from school and made it through that dark time, I went into the bodybuilding world. And that was really like the first unfolding of like putting my pain into weights, putting my pain into how can I physically transform. And ultimately through that path, I met a bunch of people in the bodybuilding world and more people sharing similar stories, but then also sharing stories about using alternative methods, cannabinoids, CBD, functional mushrooms.
Sure.
And the more that I heard that come up, I was like, there's an opportunity here.
Yeah.
And ultimately I ended up leaving corporate America 7 years into my engineering career. And
like big boy corporate America.
Big boy corporate America. I worked for Lockheed Martin.
Yeah. Like good paychecks, stability, the dream.
Yes, exactly. The dream, like what you're supposed to do. I think so many people, we find ourselves trapped in the shoulds and supposed tos of the world. Like you're supposed to do this. Yeah. You should do this. And then you get there, you accomplish it, and then you feel this deep sense of something's still missing. You feel this deep sense of like something's still like, I thought this was supposed to be the thing and I don't feel different.
Right.
And ultimately a boss that just like completely pissed me off gave me the permission slip to go. Like, okay, I'm done. And in 2017, I put in my letter of resignation and started what is now today Cured. But after I put in that letter of resignation, I woke up the day afterwards, had an idea of what I wanted Cured to be, but had no revenue, had no real plan. And now 7 years later, we're here.
Incredible, man. That's incredible. I love that story. And I love that. I love you. I love just the whole journey of it. Let me ask you this, and then this is a completely selfish question.
Yeah.
In that moment when you stepped away and all of that, and it's just like, here's what I feel like I should do, letting go of all this, nothing but uncertainty around you. And and a lot of like how did you let go? The reason I asked that is because I was actually just talking about this on the last podcast. So I feel like half these podcasts now is just, I'm just dumping all this new stuff that I'm working through. And I'm finding out I am in a state that one of the things that is my main thing I'm personally working on is letting go. Is like, I'm not making like any like career moves or anything like that, but I'm finding I have some issues around control, almost like damn near like we'll call it an emotional addiction to control. And I'm finding that there's levels of these things that I don't have the most amount of trust in, as in like, it's almost like it's what causes me a lot of anxiety. And like I have a new therapist I'm working with, and like, you know, like it's just poking some stuff and I'm like, oh, that's behind that door. I was oblivious to that. And I'm finding that I'm having a lot of things like like some attachment issues or some issues, especially around like trust, with like in whether certain outcomes I want or in like a path, and it's, or even like in a universal way of like, oh, I can only rely on me for this. And it's causing a lot of anxiety and it's causing a lot of things. And for you, when you had to make that, I hate to say that jump, that move, how did you handle some of that?
Yeah. You know, looking back on it, I definitely have a different perspective on it. And one of the things that I've recognized is, and I say this so outside of Cured, I actually mentor other entrepreneurs as well, because it's just been like a demand that I've seen coming in. And to be honest, what I've recognized is that for me to recognize what we're fully capable of, we have to step into environments that present unknowns. And so what I mean by that is basically we don't know what we're fully capable of because we haven't put ourselves in the situations to actually find out. And so what I've realized for me is that that's basically my mantra. I say, okay, I don't know what this is going to look like, but guess what? I'm going to find out who I am through it. I don't know what this is going to look like, but guess what? I'm going to find out who I am through it. And one of the things that I've realized through business is that I have to, because I'm the exact same way as you. I have to at every level, the more I let go, but in the letting go, I have a frame for how we're making decisions through core values, through principles. If I can make sure that I'm following principles, core values, things that are true to me, I know as I let go, I don't have like the grip of control, but I have the influence of the life that I really want. And I understand that if decisions are made through principles and core values, that while the result may not look exactly like I want it to, it'll have a flavor, it'll have a similarity. And so it's just like the let go, the trust that I've communicated effectively, I've made decisions that are in alignment with what I want, but then also just the remembrance of like, I don't know what I'm fully capable of because I haven't yet experienced this. I keep going through that mantra. But if you asked me that when I was about to quit Cured or when I was about to quit my engineering career, I think the thing for me that I realized was, and I did share this at Hidden Summit, what a lot of us run into is we're looking for everybody in the outside world to give us a permission slip to live the life that we want. And once we realize that we're the only person that holds that permission slip, we have to ask ourselves, what do we need to do to actually give ourselves permission to step into that next iteration, that next like chapter of life? So if we are somebody that likes to control everything, we're also in control of the next chapter of our life. So it's it's that, I think for me, it's been just like figuring out who I can be, trusting that I will figure it out in each evolution, trusting that there's going to be a lot of unknowns, trusting that I'm going to be challenged, but remembering that I find a new capability. I find a new skill set at every level, but it's like, you have to jump.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until you jump, you don't really find it out.
There's a couple things. He's a mentor, kind of not like a formal mentor, but someone who I've absorbed a lot of his content, and then we became friends. Do you know who Kyle Cease is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, dude, you and I connected over Kyle.
That's right. Yeah.
I met him at an event as well.
Yeah.
I love Kyle.
So Kyle has changed.
I know what you're about to say.
And there's two things that Kyle has talked about. And like, but while I'm in this, whenever you're working on something, it's like you have like signs, you see stuff everywhere. It's like everything like that dude says, I'm like, fuck. Yeah. Or even I took a screenshot of it. He has a brand new YouTube video. I haven't even watched it yet, but the thumbnail is, it's not working for a reason. And I'm just like, I'm like, I'm like everywhere I'm looking. But one thing Kyle says is, when going to the next level, or these kind of things like letting go, we can only measure what we'll lose, and we can never measure what we'll gain.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing
I knew you were going to say that, because I knew you and I connected over him. Yeah. It's when I heard him say that,
it's powerful.
It so puts everything that I'm trying to say in way too many words into the perfect sentence. Yeah. Like, that's what it is.
Sure.
We can't measure what we're going to gain. It's so easy to be like, I'm going to lose this. I'm going to lose this friend. I'm going to lose this connection. I'm going to lose this safety. I'm going to, like, safety financially, safety in relational, whatever it may be. You can understand what it might look like to lose that. But then the other thing that I always remember is, are those things serving you in a way that you actually want them to?
Right.
Because if you're measuring that you're going to lose those, you probably don't want them as much as you want a different future.
Yeah.
But again, we still can't measure what we're going to gain. So we want to hold on to the familiarity.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's another thing he said on a YouTube video, because he puts on a ton of YouTube content, but there was a video he was, I think the title of the thumbnail hooked me, and it was like he said how isn't working anymore. And I'm like, I feel like I need to watch that. And it was like a 10-minute video from his like membership site. And it was like a live training, and someone asked a question. That's what this video was on. And the girl, it was about finances. And she said, and the question was something about, I know I should do this thing, but I don't understand how I'm going to be supported financially. And he says, you need to, basically the whole concept was, you need to step into the vibration of I know I'm going to be supported financially, even though I don't know how. Because that has a whole different like vibrational frequency. It's literally what this whole like my neck tattoo is it's the symbol is, it's a low frequency vibrational wave low frequency transitioning into high, because it's really wide, like down on my trap.
Oh,
right?
dude,
you see what I'm saying?
That's legit.
Yeah. So it's a low frequency energy wave transitioning to a high, because it's just my own reminder of making sure my energy, my vibration is where it should be. And I'm not like drifting back into low frequency thoughts, actions, states, things like that. And but that for me feels different, where like we even see this with like fat loss clients, where they may not see how, right? But like another person I can't remember who said it, but it was like, the how's none of your business. Yeah. And I'm like, that's a different paradigm shift.
Yeah. It's the why is more important than the how. It's like, why is it important to you? And is it important enough to you?
Right.
And you'll figure out the how will show itself. I talk about that with money a lot. And one thing that I've realized is like this idea of holding on to money. The more that we hold on to money, it's not moving. So think about water. And when water's not moving, it actually becomes stagnant. And ultimately, like to scale my business, to scale a lot of business, it's all about cash flow. It's about the flow of money. Sure. It's about I have a wealth advisor. He said the missing piece in a lot of people's financial state, financial planning, financial situation, the missing piece is velocity. How quickly is that money moving to make you more money?
Interesting.
And like investing in yourself is a scary thing to do. Yeah. Especially like, in most of the coaching space or in like the mentorship space, a lot of times you have to pay an uncomfortable amount of money to get into a specific container or get close to something.
Up to like you could have bought a car, or you could have like paid off the rest of your house.
Exactly.
Whatever. Yeah.
I put something on the line. That money that I put on the line, the $10,000 that I put down, is a vote to my future self that person's actually possible. But without making that vote, without moving those chips across the table, you're actually not voting for yourself ever.
Right.
You're just holding on to something that maybe has been hard to actually acquire. But the more you hold on to it, the more stagnant that can become. It has to go back out into the world. The flow of money, like that's everything. It's like you gain it, you let it go. You gain it, you let it go. You gain it, you let it go. But like it's so hard. The actual act is so hard.
Well, I have two thoughts on that. Number one is I remember Kyle had I was watching a video on his. It was either on his membership site or it was something he was saying, and he goes, yeah, I don't like to hang on to money. I need to keep it in flow.
Yeah,
and that's literally like his exact words. But growing up, I grew up and this is one of the biggest hurdles I have is I grew up in a household that it was feast or famine, single income. Dad did construction. Like him by himself, maybe in a worker, whatever. Mom, I'm a homeschool kid. And so mom homeschooled all of me and my siblings. And it was feast or famine. It was like either business was good, we got all the toys, or jobs are scarce. So like, like buying clothes at Goodwill and only ordering off the dollar menu, or I remember growing up, all I wanted was I would just like one or two Under Armour shirts, or that, like I was that kid.
Yeah.
And I know money's not everything by any means. It's not like, I know it doesn't create happiness, and like a lot of people use it as a coping mechanism and things like that.
You have to get it to figure that out though.
100%. But at
least I think.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, being poor doesn't make you happy either. Like a lot of people say in the world of like, oh, money doesn't make you happy. But I can tell you the more money I have earned, the more I've been able to take things off my plate that take away from my happiness. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like I was, the last 2 years have been seasons of delegation for me, and I've built my team, and things that are not an energetic 10 out of a 10, I've been able to pass to people who that is their 10 out of 10. Mm-hmm. Like I have the world's best team in their own things. And like, well, I hate doing this. And like, I hate administrative work. Fuck anything and all things admin. I want to do as little of that as possible. Yeah. Well, I pay a full-time admin. Her name's Sadie. She's absolutely incredible. But I could go, well, I want to hang on to this, however much money and hoard it. But me giving that to her when that's her, I would argue it's like a gift, like those people that like organization and like numbers and all that is their thing. So it's the perfect fit. But for me, one thing that I struggle with, especially, I can get a lot of anxiety around money, or I get a lot of like low month in business or slower, like, oh no. But then
I'm done. It's over.
Well, the thing I'm working on with my therapist, and she made me like, I never thought about from an ownership standpoint. She goes, you're the one catastrophizing this, where it was like, oh, we're down a little bit this month in revenue. But then my first thought is I'm going to go homeless. It's like, but because of that's how I grew up, that's right where it goes. Yeah. So I'm working through that. Like, because even in my family, we had, where I'm from, there was, they call it the flood of 2008. That's what happened to my family. The business my dad had, the whole area I was in got big boy flooded, and there was some asterisks in some insurance policies. Things weren't covered, bankruptcies, lost the camper, lost all that stuff. And I saw it like royally like rip my dad apart. And I'm finding out in therapy that like I have some fears that I've suppressed about, like I'm worried about. Like I'm like, there's part of me there's a protector, like in like interfamily systems of like that's like, I don't want to become like that. I don't want to do that. And I realized that's like, he's been in the driver's seat for a while, and I was oblivious to it.
One of the reasons that I've been able to, because I 100% agree and associate with that. And I said this at Hidden Summit as well, but like the first couple years, 3 years into building Cured, I almost lost it all. I basically did. And so I had to go through like 0 to multi-million to like, okay, I'm going to lose it all. And then gained it all back.
Right.
If it weren't for me going through that phase, I wouldn't be in a mindset that actually has a little bit more resilience as to, okay, down happens, but up also happens. And up is also always followed by a down. Down is can be followed by an up if you know what to do correctly at the right time. But I hear you, man. Like what we're doing is like, we're literally trying to take 20, 30, however old everybody is listening to this, like 40 years of programming of a story, of a narrative, and rewrite it.
Yeah.
And it's very hard. And ultimately, that's what I work on every day, because I'm most importantly trying to get familiar with my thoughts, then saying, okay, I'm having a thought, I'm observing that thought, then I'm feeling something from that observation of the thought. And now that I'm feeling an emotion, I'm taking an action. And now that I'm taking an action, I see a result. And so what we have to do is we have to have the same thought. So have that fear, which is the emotion. So have the thought of we're going out of business, observe it, be like, is that true? What am I feeling? And then have a different behavior and action. But like that's our operating system. And it's literally ingrained in us from watching our parents, watching like whatever story we've all been through.
Well, yeah, no, I completely agree. And I feel like when I observe myself too is, I bet you're like this. I feel I've always felt very connected to you. Like, I feel like we're on a very similar wavelength. And, like, I feel like I'm extra, I know first and foremost, I'm extra sensitive to others' energy. I can feel things, right? Yeah. Second of all, I feel like, as cliche as it sounds, I feel like I'm really sensitive to manifesting stuff. Like, I feel like when I dial into, like, as airy-fairy as it sounds, like a frequency of like, and I get in a flow state, I feel like literally I can snap my fingers and magic happens. But every pendulum swings the other way. So I also feel like I'm extra sensitive. If I am unaligned, if my energy and my frequency is not good, I can fucking destroy things overnight. So for me, I'm like, that's why every tattoo is like, working on something, let's get a tattoo about it. Work on something, let's get a tattoo about it, as like a trigger. Yeah. But I feel like for me, it's because like the law of polarity, right? Like if there's an inside of the room, there's an outside, up, down, positive, negative. If I can overnight make magic happen in a good way by being aligned and not attached and, things like that, it'll go the other way. And I've literally seen, like, because I've been in business for a while now, and I've seen it happen where like one negative worry, one negative thought leads to the negative emotions, to then catastrophizing it. Then my state changes, now the content changes, and then in like overnight, it's like boom, 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 boom. But I'm like, no, okay, fucking stop. Let's fix this shit and like come back out of it. So,
dude, I had a mentor once say to me, he said, "What you want wants you." And so think about it this way. So think about, like, you bought a car, a new car recently, or within the last year. I don't remember when it was, but I know you bought a new car.
Almost a year.
So when you bought that new car, you wanted that thing so bad, right?
Yeah.
You dreamt about it. You thought about it. But guess what? You wanting that car, the car salesman wanted you to want that car. And the car salesman wanted you to want that car because if he can sell that car to you, then you're actually going to have an impact on his family. And so if we remember that what we want actually wants us, the clients that are going to come to you, they really want you. Like they really want you. We want them. They want us. Everything that we want has some trickle effect down. But that also happens when we want something bad. And what I mean by that is, like, in my beginning years of business, we had partnerships, we had business partnerships go wrong. And then I would wish ill will on them. And I would look at them on Instagram. They were getting a win. They were doing this. And I'd be like, fuck those guys. Like, and then I got a lot of fuck you back. I got a lot of that back into the world because I was always putting it out. You just attract
what you are.
Yeah. So what I wanted was people to lose. And I'm telling the universe that I like losing.
Yeah.
And then like you have to switch, like, then you get to the point where you're like, okay, somebody's winning. They're winning. And I'm putting in the same amount of effort. I wish I was winning that big. I could go into this like low vibration energy, or I could go, good for them, cheer for them. I cheer for that person. Like Andy says this all the time. He said, you see somebody winning, cheer for them. You tell the universe you like winning. You'll get more winning. And like, that's a complete perspective shift. But it's so hard because so much of the time, like, we'll look out into the world, we're saying, but I'm putting in that much effort. Why am I not getting the results? And I just try to like skip past that and like cheer for those people all the time. But that's just like completely changing our operating system. And that's what I feel the same connection to you, man. And like, obviously, like, you and I are doing a lot of the same work, like building businesses, learning who we are, trying to get a new relationship with this thing up here, and then allow that to come out in everything we do. And I feel like that's like just a continuous process. Like there's no destination to that.
Sure.
Right.
To piggyback on that, one of my favorite artists is, do you know who Russ is?
Yeah.
So love Russ, love his music.
He's great.
But more than just his music, I love the way he thinks.
Yeah.
And I've seen some like in the success space and the entrepreneurship space. I've seen him get pulled in on some interviews. Like everyone knows like who Jay Shetty is. Like I'm sure you know Jay Shetty.
Yep.
One of my favorite interviews of all time. He's done 2 interviews with Russ. His first one is one of my favorite interviews I've ever heard.
Watch that.
And one of the things that Russ talks about is during one of his albums, his whole mantra is the journey is everything. Because if you cannot be present in the journey and enjoy the journey, like that's where all of your time is spent. I think that's a testament to everything, right? Like fat loss, right? Like you're going to spend all of your time losing it. Like, yeah, you'll have the day where the scale is the number you want, but like you spent years in the trenches doing that. Or I use this analogy a lot. Like I did a big jujitsu guy. Well, I've been like, it takes a long time to go through the ranks in jujitsu. Like there's only like 5 belts, not like 13. Like my professor has been rolling for 15 years and got his black belt.
Wow.
A decade and a half. What's a little bit slower than like most people, but still like the running thing in jiu-jitsu is it's a great business model. It'll take you a decade to get a black belt. Yeah. Like, but I remember when I got my blue belt.
That's a good business model.
Right. Yeah. Your lifetime value.
We got you for the next 10 years.
Right. But what's funny is like statistically the percentage of like the average jiu-jitsu practitioner, not even people that come through jiu-jitsu academies that get a black belt is like 1%. It's so low. Wow. Yeah. But I remember this journey is everything hit me when I got my blue belt. So blue belt in jiu-jitsu is the first advanced rank. It goes white, blue, purple, brown, black. And you get technically 4 promotions per belt. So like you'll see, it's called a field. It's a little piece of fabric and you get stripes on it. So right now I'm a 4-stripe blue belt. So I'm sure I'm gonna have the same feeling when I get my purple here soon. Well, when I got my blue belt, it was dope as fuck for a half hour. Everyone's like, I'm so proud of you. Like all my training partners, our big professor came in, gave it to me, like the whole thing. It was awesome. And for 30 minutes, there was like this high, but it's back to normal, back to class, back to getting my ass beat, like all the things. But it took me like 3 years to get a blue belt. But imagine if I like hated, I love jujitsu. I love training. I just show up and I just enjoy training. I'm so present. I just enjoy my teammates. I enjoy the process. I enjoy getting tapped, like all the things. But if I like hate, I just want the blue belt. It was dope for 30 minutes. And then it would be back to hate till I get the purple belt. That'd be another 3 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I don't think it would work as well, right? Like, like I don't think you would actually keep showing up as much as you do. And I think, Russ saying that, you hear so many people say it's all about the journey, and I think some people use it as an excuse to be like, okay, it's just about the journey. It's gonna it's gonna show itself. Like something's gonna show up. I can just sit back and not worry about it. But I really think whenever because I hear that a lot, you'll hear it from everybody. You'll hear it from the Andys and the Edge. You'll hear it from everybody. And I said, like, why do people say that? And I've started to recognize why it's real and true. But what I also recognize is that the journey never starts if you never get uncomfortable enough to figure out that it's a journey that you're on. Like the journey doesn't start if you never figure out that it's you getting uncomfortable enough to actually be on a journey, be on an adventure. A journey and an adventure, they're not supposed to be comfortable.
Yeah.
But I think some people use it as a bypass to say, oh, if it's just about the journey, then I'll just sit back and whatever's going to present itself, I don't have to take action. I don't have to take responsibility. The journey doesn't start unless you actually get uncomfortable enough to create that momentum. And then you figure out, I'm learning, I'm overcoming problems, I'm figuring out more of who I am, more of what I'm capable of, which is like what I was saying earlier is like, I love figuring out who I am and what I'm capable of. Does that ever end?
No.
I don't think so.
Could you imagine, like, how old are you?
I'm 33.
Okay, could you imagine, like, your potential's reached right now?
Oh,
that'd be that'd be the most depressing day of your life. You're like, oh, wow, this is it. This is the best it's ever going to be.
Yeah.
The way I heard it, another Kyle-ism is most people, their own awareness and consciousness is like what you think, like what you and I both think of the world, like our everything we know, our consciousness. We're like, okay, I've got it figured out. But imagine this is we're in a hotel right now. We're in a hotel in Las Vegas, but realizing then you're like, there's an elevator here, and then you're like, fuck, there's an elevator here. your whole life is just on, that was one level and you're in a skyscraper. And then you're like, you spend your whole life like, oh, there's the elevator behind this door. You know, let's go to the next floor. Ding. Holy fuck. And then you're like, this is it. This is it. Spend everything there. Then you're like, there's another elevator. And all life is just like, what's the next floor? What's the next floor? And so we never reach the top and then we die.
Yeah. I feel that, man. I had a mentor that told me he had this story. It's really funny. He goes, yeah, I was 18 years old and I knew everything. And I was like, okay, so what's the point? And he's like, well, it was really safe. When you know everything, like it's really safe.
Wow.
I'm like, okay. And then started to think about it more. Well, is that really what we're looking for? Are we really just looking for safety? Or are we looking for who we can become? And I had to wrestle with that. And for me, like I used to be like the controlling everything aspect of me is like, I know everything. So I'm in control of everything.
Yeah.
And that I had to wrestle with for a long time. I read this book at the beginning of COVID called Being Wrong. And it was about like ideologies and cult thinking basically.
Wow.
And there was this group of people and they were speaking about the second coming of Jesus. And it was predicted to be on a certain day, certain time. And they had been like planning this whole ceremony for years. And they got to the point where it got to the day, it got to the time, and nothing happened. But then they continued to hold on to the story for months and years and whatever decades, trying to justify when it didn't happen. But what about being wrong and then recognizing that the world, the universe, opportunities for us could be way more expansive than we could ever imagine. And hey, let's go try to figure out and learn something new. Once we start to look at life where like, I know nothing, it's simultaneously a scary and the most exciting place that could ever exist.
Like an adventure. Kind of curious, almost a curious energy.
And like you see that with kids. We were talking about little kids earlier.
Yeah.
Like imagine if I could walk through the world the way in which my daughter does.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so that's like one of the big things that I'm learning from her is like, what's a childlike curiosity way of moving through the world? Because the most important thing to do to develop relationships is to show up with curiosity. Like I'm interested in who you are. Like, how do you think? How do you explore the world?
You know, it's one of the things I keep going back to lately is it's one of the reasons I love. So one of the jokes I say is, but I'm totally serious. Is some of my favorite things are cigars and a good conversation. Just give me a cigar and a good conversation, because a cigar, that means I can't speed through this. That means it's going to take at least an hour and a half in good conversation, enjoying those sticks. And, but then that got me thinking like, well, one of my favorite things ever is interviewing and having those good conversations. It's just documented. But it's because, I was thinking like, why do I love questions so much? Why do I love interviewing people? And it's because of an organic conversation, something that comes through me that I didn't think to ask, or they say that you never said before, but I asked a question in a way that just triggered something different. And you may have say something profound that's just beautiful, that has never been said before, that has some profound effect. Like there's been things in our conversation just now that's been helping me, so I'm getting like selfishly a lot out of this conversation with you. And I just think it's the coolest thing ever, but it's because there's this like underlying curiosity behind all of this.
Have you always been this way? Or do you think like and what I mean by that is like, did becoming an entrepreneur start to shift the way that you looked at the world?
Without a doubt. For me, I think I heard it from Ed Milet first, but for me, entrepreneurship has been the most insane self-discovery, self-development program with the highest compensation plan.
Oh man. Yeah. What are you working on the most right now? Like as an entrepreneur, what's the hardest thing for you? And maybe you're working on that same thing, or I'm just curious, like for you.
So there's a few things, especially on the deeper side, thinking bigger. I have reached my dream 10 times over. It's interesting. Like I think about my problems, right? There's a saying, with every new level comes a new devil, right? Yeah. I think about because we never escape problems, but like my problems are not what they used to be. Like old Jared would have like loved to have the problems I have. Right. You know what I mean? Like old Jared, like the thought was like, can I pay rent this month? Like, you know, like I remember I had when Shelby and I first got married, I think about my electricity bill was like $171. And I was stressing because I didn't know. I was, you know, the business wasn't off the ground and all those things. And, but it was a fucking grind versus now it's like that version of Jared looking at the problems I have now, it's like, what the fuck are you bitching about? You know, I think it's perspective. But I think there's a level of thinking bigger because once you reach new levels, it's like, I think there's a level of constant growth, but I'm also in working on, this is the hard one because I'm also in this state personally of letting go and like releasing outcomes. One of the things that Russ says in that interview is attachment is the root of all suffering, which really hit me when I heard it, as well as leaning into what Kyle talks about and whatnot. That really has been hitting with me. That's made me really shift perspective and think is whatever your vision is one, if not careful, a denial of this moment. But also like it could be blocking you from something else even bigger. A beautiful analogy of that is actually my dynamic with Kyle. For context, I think we may have been talking about this before. Have I told you how like Kyle and
I don't remember if you did.
So long story short, I've had Kyle on the show. And that was like a jaw drop moment. I was like scared beyond belief because Kyle, I had been absorbing Kyle's material. Like to give you context, I heard Kyle Cease on the Ed Milet show. His content, like I've never had something penetrate like my spirit so hard. I listened to that interview probably 30 times. No exaggeration. Then, because you know how like the podcast circuit goes, then he went on Lewis Howes. Listen to that one like 15 or 30 times because it's different. He did an inner child session with Lewis and I was like, wow, never heard of this kind of shit. I felt things, like did the session with myself. Then Tom Bill, like, so I'm like going crazy, bought both of his books, have read his second one like so many times. And then I had the balls to say, hey, would you want to come on my show? Yeah. Actually, the first time they replied back, well, tell me some of your stats. And immediately went like, I didn't even reply. I was embarrassed and because it was whatever. And here's the thing, the timing wasn't right. It was not right. And however long later, like a couple of years later, I'm like, I would love to have a conversation with Kyle. And I did. And I shot him an email and the email was just like a low key, like it wasn't even a hard pitch. It was I just said, hey, whatever. My name's Jared Hamilton. I host I host an inner game. How do I word a nutrition and inner game podcast called Dieting from the Inside Out. And I would love to have Kyle on the show. I think it would help my audience a lot or something like that. Yeah. I said, whether we do this or not, I just want to thank you and let you know that you've changed my life in more ways than I can count. Oh, here's my Instagram, by the way, Jared, whatever. And they replied back, yep, ask Kyle. He said it feels right. And that's how, and so immediately shit my pants. Yeah. Well, okay. I had this sense something was going to happen. We scheduled it. We're good to go. And I'm like, dude, there's like, Kyle was my number one that like above Ed Milet, above like, if I could interview Tony, like in that moment, Kyle was my number one person I wanted to interview. Selfishly, because there were specific questions I wanted to ask him and just be able to have a moment with him. And so I'm like nervous, but I also know Kyle's is so sensitive to energy and what you feel and any chasing energy. Like, you know what I'm saying? So when that all happened, I had the feeling something cool was going to happen. I didn't know what it was, but I had a feeling something dope was going to happen. I jokingly told my wife, I said, it's either just we're going to hop on it or we're going to be best friends. One of the two. But, you know, I'm just thankful for the opportunity. What is what is, and I will let whatever happen. I'm so unattached. I have never not looked at my notes so much. I've never been so present in a conversation more in my life than that with Kyle. Kyle was exactly who I thought he was. It was one of the best conversations with any human I've ever had. And I went in truly, actually, like I felt something cool was going to happen, but I went in with truly zero attachment, zero anything. By the time that conversation was ended, like what my vision of what I would have wanted to happen would have been like 18 steps below what actually happened. At the end of that conversation, Kyle wanted my number, wanted to stay in contact with me. wanted to share that video on his YouTube, which at the time had like 180,000 subscribers. Kyle made me an intro to his YouTube, basically edifying me like I've never been edified before he's like in this position, like my hero.
Wow.
Like he's literally saying, Jared is the real deal. Jared is this and this and this and this. So I'm like getting emotional watching just the intro. Then 2 weeks later, I got a voice message from Kyle from his texting me or on like an iPhone, like voice to text or whatever, inviting me to come out to Sedona VIP to his event to see him live. Then he invited me to come backstage and have lunch with him and his team. And I just chilled out back there. And now I talked to his assistant, like as like friends, like helping her with like her programming and shit. And then they just invited me and my wife out for his massive event here in June.
Wow. Yeah.
If I had any goal of like, I want whatever, like, I would have missed out. That's the thing. If I would have been so attached to, I want him to follow me back on Instagram, or I want to be friends with him. There would have been a chasing dynamic. He would have felt it. He wouldn't have felt aligned because Kyle doesn't do anything without that way. Actually, I think most people don't. They just don't know it. But I don't think any of that cool shit would have happened. So to answer a very long-winded answer to say, I feel like I'm in a state of letting what's supposed to happen and being receptive and present in this moment to feel any guidance or pull in any direction. And this is the hardest one, and just trusting that it's where I'm supposed to go and what I'm supposed to do, even though I truly can only see one step in front of me.
Wow. Dude, that's so powerful. That's so powerful. And I think that that's what's almost like scary about like,
I'm terrified.
Like vision casting, right? Because I think that that's the question that we all ask ourselves. And as you start to have those experiences, you recognize that, oh, wow, like life could be so much bigger than I could ever imagine. Can I handle it? That's scary. And at the same time, starting to build like that confidence in ourselves that, wow, I could look at that in a way where I am so excited for what's to present itself. I have no idea what's about to come.
So Kyle's prompt he talks about is, he goes, I have no idea. I just know it's going to be awesome. And that's literally that's where he puts it, period. Yeah. He goes, I don't know. I just know it's going to be awesome. When I went into that interview, it was literally like, I didn't, those words in my head, but I truly felt I have no idea what's going to happen. I just know it's going to be dope. Yeah. Worst case scenario is I talk to my hero and thank him. I actually like cried while talking to him because of like, actually, I wonder if that's where it all came from, because I was just trying to share with him like how much his shit's changed me. And like, I got a little emotional. And actually what was funny, one of the other compliments that I got that was just like, it hit me was because one of my biggest insecurities I personally struggle with is my intelligence. Okay. That's one of my biggest insecurities, but also is my communication ability, is because I grew up as a kid that like I got made fun of for like, oh, Hamilton's here because he won't shut up, or just because of the way like education wise growing up, I was always annoying. I was always fast talking, like did all this stuff. Well, now I fucking podcast for a living, but so that's always a little worry of mine.
Yeah.
But as soon as the conversation with Kyle was over and we stopped recording, his assistant was also on the call. She just kept her screen off just to make sure we didn't need anything. Her hand was over her mouth, like.
Wow. And
she said that Jared was one of the best podcast interviews we have ever had. Kyle agreed, but Ed Milet's interviewed him. Tom Bilyeu's interviewed him. Lewis Houses interviewed him. So like in this, and I was actually going to ask you this next. So the very first thing that comes up for me is like this inner like protector, like we talk about the inner family systems is now I'm finding there's some like worthiness. I'm like, am I good enough? Like when you say like these goals of like, can I handle that? I think a lot of people struggle with, and I do, is like, am I good enough? Am I good enough for that? Mm-hmm. How do you, because I love the way that you think. How do you unpack that? Like whether it be for yourself or for others on like when it's like, am I even good enough? Or am I even worthy of the thing?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Worthiness is a very, very interesting thing to wrestle with. And for me, what I've recognized is that there's a difference between like thinking that you deserve something and then associating the work and commitment and input into what I really want with my life. And for me, what I've had to shift to is just recognizing myself more for the effort, the input, the resilience, and then looking at that, congratulating myself, appreciating myself for that work, and understanding that that's out of love for myself and who I want to be. That work used to be punishment of myself. So what I mean by that is like, I would work, be so disciplined, be like, have this like self-hatred towards myself. And I'm like, I can create things and get what I want in my life because of this hatred that I have towards myself that drives me forward.
I've been there. Yeah.
And my therapist asked me at one point, he said, what would it look like to fully forgive yourself?
Wow.
And when he asked me that, I said,
I gave me chills just now.
Yeah, I just got the chills too. And I said, well, if I fully forgive myself, I won't have the same drive.
Dude, that has been, I was literally going to bring that up. That has been one of my biggest things that I used to wrestle with this way back when, but now like I'm with a new therapist and she's getting deeper than anyone's ever gotten. I'm finding there's some of that still. I thought I didn't have anymore. I mean, I'm finding right now there's that, like, if I let go of control, I'll lose this. Or if I have more grace for myself, or if I, love myself more or whatever, I'm going to lose this like fucking killer instinct and this hunger that's created so much success in my life.
Yeah. So I take that, the input, the commitment, the resilience, the hard work, the frustration, the determination, my consistency. I know I am next level at all of that. It used to be out of hatred towards myself because I felt like I would never be enough and I felt like I could never forgive myself. Then I decided I am going to forgive myself. I am going to give myself grace. And then I took all of that input, all that commitment, that work, that discipline. And now whenever I start to feel like I'm not worthy, I say, well, what if I saw my daughter putting in that amount of work, that amount of commitment? What if as I see my wife putting that amount of work in, that amount of commitment, that amount of discipline? What if I was speaking to myself as if I was speaking to my wife or my daughter? Would I be speaking to myself through a lens of you're not worthy, you're not enough?
Good filter.
And like whenever I do that, I'm like, okay, no, like I would never do that.
Yeah.
But it's hard because when, like for me, I used to judge my younger self as if my younger self had the knowledge of a 30-year-old.
Wow.
And if you think about who you are when you're 7 years old, 5 years old, you look at the world completely differently.
Yeah.
Like for me, one of the hardest things for me was my dad was an airline pilot. And so growing up, he would be gone 3-4 days, back home, gone 3-4 days, back home. Every time my dad came home, like as a young kid, you don't recognize that your dad's out working to bring in money to support the family. I look at that from a completely different perspective now. As a child, it's where's my dad? Is he coming home?
Yeah.
Will he recognize me when he comes home? So when he would come home, I'd be like, I have to have the lines perfect in the grass. I have to make sure that saying like, you're the man of the house. So my mom and my sister, I'm 5 years old, I'm 7 years old. Like, what does that really mean? But like, how can I have my dad come home and then me be recognized for being the man of a house? But like putting that on a 5-year-old or 7-year-old, it wasn't pressure. Like intentionally, right? But it's also just like, I say that to my dog. Like we have a Belgian Malinois. I leave it like, you protect the girls when I'm gone. Right. And I just mean it. I'm like, yeah, you're badass. Like you could attack somebody if they can.
That's right.
But like, that's just like, it's all like, I guess the summary of all of that is like perspective. What's the internal narrative that I have towards myself? If I put somebody else in that same position, how would I think of that person? And especially with my daughter and my wife or a close friend or a family member, something like that. Like I wouldn't have that judgment towards them. And for me, that's changing the worthiness that I have for myself because we have a lot of similarities that I've recognized. Like we can work until like we pass out, right? And I used to be like, that's honorable. And I am appreciative of it, but it used to be out of hatred towards myself. Now it's out of appreciation and who can I actually become through all of that work. And I just like have to remind myself of that.
Dude,
every single day.
I think I needed to hear that a lot. That was huge. That helped me a lot. So I appreciate that a lot. One thing that rocked me the first time I ever heard it, because I used to really battle with this worthiness thing, like a lot. That was when I first started getting into Kyle's material. And the thing that like, hang on, what? It's almost like when someone really finds out for the first time carbs don't store fat. And they're like, wait, hang on. You just, whatever. I can eat carbs and lose weight.
Yeah.
It was when Kyle says, what if worthiness doesn't exist and you can't escape being worthy? And I'm like, hang on. Like, wait a second. And I couldn't comprehend it. When he said, what if worthiness doesn't exist? What if there's nothing you can do to escape being worthy? As in the fact that your heart is beating right now means you are worthy of everything you desire. And I was like, fuck that. And I had a hard time receiving that. And there are times I still have a hard time receiving that, especially as I'm doing this, it's a lot of protector work. I'm finding, I found out in therapy that I have a protector that has been in the driver's seat most of my life. Yeah. And I was oblivious to it. And I've had a lot of hatred towards this protector that I didn't know I had, because I just saw him giving me all this suffering, versus my therapist was like, he also made you build all this. And like all the success I've had. And I'm like, oh, it's really hard to be angry now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm finding that like that protector is triggered when I first start to lean into like, oh, maybe I am worthy and good enough. But it's like, but maybe you'll get hurt if you believe that, because then you'll quit being ambitious and lose everything. Like I'm seeing all this just because there's like, I felt like with my last therapist, I plateaued. That's why I switched. I was with her for like 3 years and it was huge. Then I went to this one and I'm like, whoa. I didn't know this land existed. I thought the pool stopped this deep, and now it's like this deep. Yeah. Holy shit.
Yeah. I tell my therapist, if you go to her website, it says leadership resilience coach. And it's like, oh yeah, I need a lot of resilience. But sometimes we'll get to the end of the phone call and I'll be like, I'm going to say this in one sentence. I hate you and I love you at the same time, because you challenged me. And that was like the biggest thing with my wife. She challenged me so much. And my therapist challenges me so much. And now like I really appreciate being challenged by other people, my team members, my employees. Like the more that they challenge me, I have to like recognize that I'm triggered. Why am I triggered? Because I feel like I'm not worthy. And then I have to like go through this whole like process of like, okay, I am being challenged. That gives me an opportunity to respond in a different way with therapy. And I really appreciate talking about this, because when I started, I was like, before I almost committed suicide, I was in therapy, and then I was in a lot of therapy afterwards. And for the longest time, I could just control the outcome of the conversation. Like I could keep the conversation safe. Like, I'm not going to go there. Like I'm going to point the finger at this. Like you sit down and like therapists like, so what's up? Yeah. And you're like, well, this person's doing this and that person's doing this, and this is frustrating me. And I was able to like, say I went to therapy, leave the therapist's office and be like, yeah, I'm happier because I controlled the outcome. But it was just this like never ending cycle of like, you're just in control. You're like manufacturing this false like amount of work or improvement. And
right. I feel that right now, because I don't try to do that. But like, so but I almost wonder if there's a level that happening unconsciously. Yeah. Because I'll go to therapy with a little bit of an agenda. I'm like, hey, exactly, I took notes during the week. Here's what I've been working on. But then the way that my therapist does it, she has a little check-in. She does the exact same with every beginning of every session. She does a 1 to 10 scale and goes through several specific emotions, like how over the past, in this moment, how much anxiety are you feeling? 1 to 10, and she goes like anxiety, sadness, anger, joy, contentment, these different things. And then she's like, okay, in the past week. And then based on how I answer those, she'll steer the conversation. But like the past 2 or 3 sessions, I've come with a notebook because I'm like, I want to, because some of this protector work, and I want to show her the stuff I've been working on, but we haven't gotten to it. And she's like, we can do this whatever way you want. But I'm like, I get that. But then part of me also is like, there's been the same concepts and same subject matter that we've been working through. And it's kind of correlated, but I really don't want to talk about it. Yeah. And I'm like, but I want to do this. I want to talk about this because I think this is going to give me a better result right now. Yeah. But I'm just like, you know what? And she like keeps pulling it back here. And I'm like, maybe I should just like fucking let go and stop trying to steer this motherfucker.
Yeah. It's a hard thing. Like that's what I recognize that I used to always do that. And now I show up and I'm like, okay, you're in charge. I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
Like, I think that that's something too for any individual that's leading a company or is in some type of leadership position or an entrepreneurship. Like there's a lot of pressure because at the end of the day, like you are the decision maker, and being the decision maker holds a lot of responsibility. It holds a lot of pressure. And a lot of times we have to make decisions based on 50% of the information, 60% of the information. And at times, as a leader, you'll make a decision that doesn't make the whole team happy. It makes maybe 30% of the team happy, or maybe it doesn't make 90% of the team happy. But as a leader, that is ultimately one of the hardest things. I would just say for me is that you are ultimately the person that makes the decision, and it holds a lot of weight. You can have a conversation. Like I've had conversations with my leadership team, like, is this person somebody that we need to hire, or is this person somebody that we need to let go? I mean, do we need to move on? We can all agree on the conversation. We can say, yes, we all agree we need to let go of this person. Then you have to let go of the person.
Yeah.
And that is what's so hard. And so like what I've realized in all of that is you're ultimately not in control, because you can't make that person happy and still let them go at the exact same time.
Right.
And so for me, that's like what I work in therapy the most is like, how do I give this person something that helps them grow and ultimately serves what I'm trying to create?
Sure.
And it's like this like really hard balance.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's such a it's so hard, dude. That's awesome, dude. This has been like one of my favorite conversations.
We could probably go for hours.
I know, dude. Thank you so much for doing this, and I know you're busy with everything with this conference, but I really appreciate you popping up here and doing this. Where can people find more about you, Cured, everything? Like, where can people find more about?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find Cured Nutrition on Instagram. Just type out Cured Nutrition. You got to do the whole thing. We're shadow banned. We've got all the issues.
That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Or you can find myself, Joseph Sheehey, JOSEPHSHEEHEY on Instagram. All my stuff's there. Reach out to me directly. I run a podcast with my wife, but Cured, Instagram, you can find it all on Instagram.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you again.
Brother. Appreciate you.
Hell yeah.